On this week's episode of the Imagineers Disney podcast, we have a walkthrough of Hollywood studios with former Imagineer McNair Wilson. You don't want to miss this. All this ahead on the Imagineers Disney podcast.
Use your imagination.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Imagineers Disney podcast. I am your host, Matt, and we have a very, very special episode for you this week. I just got back from Orlando, from The Thing. It was a creative conference down in the Walt Disney World area. One of the things we actually got to do during the week was take a little tour of Hollywood studios with a former Imagineer. McNair Wilson worked for the company back in the 80s and 90s, and it is because of him that we have several things in Hollywood studios, one of them being Tower of Terror. So we actually got to ride Tower of Terror with him, and we got to walk and talk with him and find out more about the ride. And we thought that would be a really cool experience for you guys to listen in on what his thoughts were during the creative process and how Tower of Terror came to be. So without further ado, here is our walking tour of Hollywood studios with Imagineer McNair Wilson.
So you know why Tower of Terror is a hotel?
No, teach me.
Marty Sklar calls and says, I want you to put together a team to figure out a weenie for Hollywood Boulevard. I said, okay. And he said, and Eisner's coming tomorrow with some friend of his. He wants to work with you guys on it. Walks in with Mel Brooks, and we're like, okay, just kill us now. And I'd taken my coat off, so I didn't have my name tag on. I introduced the team. I said, no, we call you Mr. Brooks. He says, call me Mel. And I said, guys, and I went, Mel. And from then on, in any meeting, I have a question. Mel, I'd like to know. He loved it. So then he says, and what do I call you? And he's well over 2'5", and he's pounding my chest looking for a name tag. I said, oh, you're going to have to call me Mr. Wilson. He said, all right, so he did. So we're brainstorming with Mel Brooks what would happen in an old haunted hotel. And so we just went around the table. You go in and this and this and this, and the elevator doesn't work, so you go down to the steam room and you get in the service elevator. And Mel Brooks said, what is her? I said, it's got that gate instead of a door, and you can see every floor. And what happens on every floor? Oh, that's a detail. We'll get to that later. Boom, boom. We get to the top, and one of the guys says, and the elevator shakes, and the gate opens, and the elevator comes out of the shaft and goes down the hall. We all laugh, and Mel says, can we do that? And I said, well, I know a guy. He says, you know a guy? I said, yeah, his name is Jack, head engineer on Space Mountain in L.A. If anybody could take an elevator out of the shaft and take it down. That day I went to lunch with those guys, and I had a salt shaker, this and this and this. And then the guy says, and I said, it comes out of the shaft and goes down the hall. And I said, okay, great, then what? He said, then what? Like I'd asked him 6 months ago and they'd figured it out. And so he said, how are you going to get people back down? I said, I don't know how I can get them out of the shaft. And I said, I don't know. What I'd like to do is a Roadrunner, delayed drop. So I took the salt shaker, Coyote's chasing Roadrunner. Roadrunner goes off the cliff, he's a bird, he's fine. Roadrunner goes off the cliff, he's not fine, he's not a bird. And I dropped the salt shaker, hovering. So I like it. How tall is this hotel? And I said, well, it's all suites, fancy. It was going to be the hotel for the top. People that check into the Grand Floridian and they give them the nicest room and it's okay. If they had something nicer, they'd be willing. So he said, I said, well, okay, we'll make it 10 stories. He said, come on, theme park boy. So we were called, because it was Mel Brooks Hollywood Horror Hotel. And he would say horror slowly, I said, 13 stories. And he turned to the other guy, said, can we do 13 stories? He said, well, we can do 190 feet. Above that, we have to put a thing and a light. That's why the castle's 188 or something like that. He said, we'll make it as high as we can. We'll paint it to look 13. So this is 189. So when my buddy Joe Rohde is building Everest, he said, now how tall is this going to be? I said, about 188, 89. So he went and got the rockwork guys and added 6 inches to Everest just so it'd be a half a foot taller than Tower of Terror.
About that. It's devious.
Yeah, he is. He's demonic. He's a bastard. No, he's great. He's brilliant. Worked on a bunch of things with him. So that's the. So someday I'll work in. I'll go up there and get some extra tiles and stack them up 8 inches.
One more lightning rod.
Yep.
But still, it's taller than the Swan and the Dolphin, which are.
Yep.
Are we getting in the whatever?
Yeah, let's go.
80 minutes, 90 minutes?
No.
Oh, no.
Don't worry about that.
Oh, all right.
You're with us today, Doc. darling.
All right, all
I'll take
right.
you up to the penthouse.
All right. So here, I'll really break your heart. Because when I back on the street theater, originally there was going to be people here. So there'd be a guy reading the paper, right? Sitting here with his back to you. Next time you come through, he's not an AA figure. He turns around and says, have you read this? Or the guy's playing. Or a guy behind the counter, right? Next thing, front please, and the guy comes through with his bags. I did an Undertaker in line, entertaining the line at Disneyland Haunted Mansion. Haunted Mansion outfit, but dirty, dusty, torn, dead boot in here, shovel, and a tape measure. Find the guy in line reading, smoking. Oh, we'll be seeing you very soon, sir. It stopped the line. It was a 90-minute wait. They had to bring out 3 Haunted Mansion cast members to remind people to keep the line. And I told them, I said, we'll turn the lines into an audience. And when we did the review and showed the video, I said, yeah, but everybody stopped. They thought it was a show. I said, yeah, because it was. And so we had 27 characters for the Magic Kingdom, bag handler at Star Wars. Where are you going? Tatooine? Oh, Tatooine's terrible this time of year. Go to Oth. Oth, the pleasure spot of the early springtime, right? And they didn't want to pay for it. I said, it'll cost you a dime per guest per annum. At that point, it was about 12, 13 million guests. So for basically $1 million, you could make the long lines disappear. And they can tell you where the longest lines. So in the morning, I might do 4 shifts, Star Tours. In the afternoon, I would do, Haunted Mansion. An actor would do that. And one of the guys said, yeah, but wouldn't they recognize you? I said, look, I do Hoop-De-Doo on Monday night. Tuesday afternoon, I'm in UK with an Irish accent. People say, yeah, we see you at Hoop-De-Doo last night. Heavy set fella? Kind of an overbite? That's my brother. It's not as nearly as funny as me. You'll see. And guests love that they think they figured something out. But just imagine if there are just 2 or 3 live characters here. The first time I met Marty Sklar, head of management, he said, have you ever thought about putting live actors in a brick and mortar ride? I said, only since 1966, when my drama teacher, Mom, and I rode Pirates of the Caribbean right after and said, it was great. If 2 of the pirates had been real, change every time. So we did a party for Imagineers 35th. We put 33 actors, all Imagineers, but imagine it wouldn't be hard to find.
That's awesome.
And we said to everybody, come to the party, go through Pirates and get off and we'll have dinner. They wouldn't get off. We ran it for an hour and a half because it was dramatically different. But I just love that, they did that kind of work. When we did Streetmosphere, during our 6 weeks of rehearsals, every one of the 33 actors was assigned. We picked 1947. And every one of the actors was assigned a piece of research so that when we opened, all the actors knew what the 10 most popular songs in 47 were, who were the top box office people, what were the... And when guests came through the turnstile, we don't care where they thought they left their car in Orlando, they're now in Hollywood. So we didn't treat them like guests in a theme park. It says, you folks live here in Hollywood, or are you from some other part of LA? Pacoima. Oh, I love Pacoima. There's no freeways to Pacoima. How do you get there? And it just changed everything. Well, then I ended up doing a workshop for all the cast members that worked in the retail shops, for the band members. I said, we have crosswalks. Use the crosswalks. Don't jaywalk. Just little things like that. Whether we made a big deal about that for guests, we knew it, treated it like a real place. We had one of our actors, and if you saw a picture of him, you've seen him on TV a lot, Asif Manvi, and he put a couple in the back of a yellow cab that used to be on Hollywood Boulevard. Where are you folks from? Hey, you know who was in that back seat yesterday? Errol Flynn, Mr. Errol Flynn. Robin Hood himself was there. Talks to him for 20 minutes. Now, where are we going? You want to go to the Chinese theater? Okay, let me get my... I left my keys in my other pants. I'll be right back. Takes us 20-minute break. Leaves him in the back seat. They didn't get upset, but they waited 10 minutes to go ask him, is he coming back? So I said, Asif, good work. Don't leave him in it. But to have those kind of stories in their heads and know what Eisner comes up to me one day, says, I just got a business card from Melrose. I said, Michael, he's an agent. He's got to have a business card. He said, he's a street theater character. I said, shh, he doesn't know. And he said, do others have? And I said, yeah. He says, all of them? I said, no. So how many? I said, what, I'm going to tell you the end of the movie? You're going to collect the whole set. So there was the Time magazine article about this park. The headline was, you're under arrest. The whole take on the article was how we'd created a theme park that was a living place. Because I had a guy that was an old friend that I hired for one of the policemen. And we're standing there and I said, officer, look at those 3 guys there. Are they here for the Hollywood Boulevard Grand Prix? It's 3 dads with... So they lined them up where the break in the highway was. Ladies and gentlemen, by the time he starts the race, it's lined up all the way across. Now we got 1,000 people. Blows the whistle, they only go 20 feet. Here's our winner. Pulls out of his pocket, I'm gonna have to give you a speeding ticket, sir. And we had these tickets that you could give guests, and some of the things you could get arrested for was having too much fun, impersonating Elvis, resembling a peanut butter sandwich, so and so on. You know, so Time Magazine got it. A friend of mine, my legal first name, the C. McNair, is Craig. I had an acquaintance named Craig Wilson, just like me, who was a feature writer for USA Today. So I said, Craig, you got to come down. Disney will pay for the whole thing. You don't have to write a word. Well, I don't know. So he came down. So he says, what do you think your take on this park is? I said, and I knew he was a theater guy. I said, it's the world's largest play. Well, how do you? I said, just on the cover of USA Today, color photo, Sid Cahuenga, Mrs. Cahuenga, a couple of. He said, well, I don't really have control. That's exactly what happened. Disney MGM Studios, the gate, Sid Cahuenga, so on, so on, so on. And Heisman was like, look. And I said, you're welcome. So, but it really, I mean, because it was small, we had to do something else. And so opening day, every attraction had a live element that if you took that out, you'd have to close down the attraction. Not just somebody saying, please move across the aisle, filling in every. When you're doing stuff like this, or our streetmosphere characters, operations, as nice of people as some of them are, do we stop them? Do we not stop them? Head of retail for all the parks came to me during soft opening and says, I can't talk to your people. I said, I have people now? He says, you know, you're little street people. I said, Michael Marsalis is 6'5", he's not little. But I can't talk to them. I said, they're all Americans. We hired them from 10 American cities. They speak English. Yeah, but they're always doing their thing. I said, oh, you mean they're always in character on stage? Imagine that. I said, the only time they're allowed to break character, they don't have to, is the guest hurts themselves and draws blood. But even if he draws blood, I can still, in character, turn to another guest and say, go into Newberry's, say 911 Hollywood Boulevard, and the EMTs will be here in less than 90 seconds. They don't have to break character. And he goes, got it. And then that's what led to me doing a workshop for anybody that worked in and around Hollywood Boulevard, whether it's security, whatever, just to say, let's make this a real place, because it is. I left and moved to the studio in 91, 92. My first, I was consulting for a year at Imagineering while still doing the street theater at Epcot. And my first official day at Imagineering was April 1st, 1987. And I have the guest book with signatures from really some classic Imagineers, but a whole page from Marty. But it's a whole thing of him saying, well, you're in the big time now, kid. You know, sinker, or you're fired, out of here. And I remember the day he called me into his office and he said, I'm going to buy you out of your contract and let you go. And I just broke into tears because I had seen Claude Coates, who designed Pirates of the Caribbean, I mentioned, on the Disney Sunday night show when I was a kid. And Walt said, this is Claude. He's our head Imagineer. And I yelled at my mom, Imagineer, Mom! I said, just listen. And my first day at Imagineering, fast forward to whenever that would have been, they had a party in the patio to give a diamond stud in the name tag to a guy who'd been there 50 years, and it was Claude Coates. And Marty took me over and introduced me. And I said, Mr. Coates, you're the reason I'm here. A couple months later, I'm in my office near Bob Weiss, but also across the hall from Claude. And I'm sitting, and I always sat with my back to the door. In other words, don't face the distraction. You're telling people, I'm not doing anything important, interrupt me. And there's this little rap on the side. Claude was 6'7". I said, excuse me, you got a minute? I said, sure. And he says, come over to my office, I'm working on something, I'd like to get your opinion. And I started to look to see what other Imagineers were there to put him up to it. But he really did, if you liked, he really did want your opinion on stuff. And we talked, and he'd show me something, I'd been sitting, and he's taking notes, and I looked over, and he goes, I got to write this down. Can you slow down? You got some good ideas? So he worked there 50, I don't know if he worked there, Marty did 54 years. I don't know if Claude got to 54. Went out to dinner with some friends, face down in his dinner. Lived a full life. Met his wife. He was doing back. When you watch Pinocchio, Geppetto's shop, look behind the characters, the wall of toys is Claude's watercolors. He was hired because he was an architect, and they found that they'd done some movies where they're outside this house and the door is here and the window's here, then they go inside and they didn't switch it. So the house is back. So Claude, literally any building, including the layout for the original Dumbo Circus, he would do blueprints of. So when he's retiring, they always did a big dinner and testimonials, and they would do a gallery show of all their art if they were a visual artist. So I spent the day with Claude in the archives, humidified room. We had to wear white gloves, and I said, you know, when they're tracking and there's a background movie, how long is it? Oh, there might have been 3 or 4 feet. We found one that was 14 feet long, painted, that they would move. So we get to these two things. You know, they never sign anything because it's Walt Disney Productions. And I said, well, what about on the edge? Here's the painting that you did of the background, and then there's the edge. Nope, But the way Claude knew it was his drawing is, at the bottom, you know, it'd say Pinocchio, and then it'd say that was a rubber stamp, but then it was scene, SC period, and the number. Well, he had a little extra kind of a loop on his S, so that's how we found his stuff. So we found these two pieces that were about this big, kind of an ochre, darker mustard yellow. Exactly the same, except this one had two brown brushstrokes on it. It was the side of a tent, and by shooting one on the other, it made the side of the tent move. There were two characters standing in front. I said, Claude, you got to put this up. So at his retirement party, and you get your picture taken with Claude, that's where everybody wanted to stand. Because they were the most simple thing, but they told in two images, and two brushstrokes really, the difference between Disney and everybody else. Detail.
You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
Rod Serling did not voice all of that dialogue.
He voiced none of it. Mark Silverman overdubbed, so it would be consistent.
It is a wonderful voice.
And the visual, it cuts at this, as you already recognize, cut. There was never an episode about an elevator.
Right.
So I'm on this with a family, and I'm wearing my Imagineering jacket. Lady says, "Is this scary?" I said, "Well, let's work it out, lady. Everything in here is rusty. We're wearing seat belts. What could possibly go wrong?"
Right.
She screamed from the moment it started moving.
Terminal, about to ascend into your very own episode of The Twilight Zone.
How do they do that?
Only we knew somebody knew.
That's actually what we call a non-effect, or non-special effect.
One stormy night long ago, 5 people stepped through the door of an elevator and found a nightmare.
Salt shaker, Terry.
That door is open once again.
Stony sandwich, McNair.
Yes. Yeah, salt shaker, pastrami sandwich, and then what happens?
Theme park boy.
I tried to get a name tag of that, and the guy I talked to at security that day wasn't.
Now, was this the first trackless vehicle that Disney created?
First what?
Trackless, like...
No,
with
no,
the
no.
magnet?
Universe of Energy. Same
yeah.
system. Copper wire and the cement. So when I said, they said, "Oh, easy." They knew right away what it would be.
You are about to discover what lies beyond the 5th dimension, beyond the deepest, darkest corner of the imagination, in the Tower of Terror.
Enough already. Bravo.
A warm welcome back to those of you who made it, and a friendly word of warning. Something you won't find in any guidebook. The next time
Yeah.
you check into a deserted hotel on the dark side of Hollywood, make sure you know just what kind of vacancy you fill, or you may find yourself a permanent resident
Of the Twilight Zone. Most people don't realize that. Terry, the B, it's a 13.
Ladies and gentlemen,
What?
please gather your belongings and watch your step as you exit through the elevator doors. We trust your stay at the Hollywood Tower Hotel has been a pleasant one. Please do come back and see us again.
Drop in again anytime.
It is definitely a different experience riding it at night.
Oh yeah. You know the best ride in the Magic Kingdom they won't let you ride on? Space Mountain with the lights on.
Oh, true.
You could wear Depends and it wouldn't help. And I was there one time, they were working on it. Tony says, "You want the thrill of a lifetime?" Tony Baxter. I said, "Yeah." He said, "They're working on Space Mountain." I said, "With the lights on it?" And the reason they want to do it is the operation guys think it's ugly and dirty. And I said, "Well, we'd put, somebody with a file with sparks and make it look like an industrial workplace. But you think you can't get to, you turn the lights on and you say, there's nowhere to go ahead." The proposal I wrote was, every night that the park is open, the last 2 hours, it's Space Mountain, lights on. Well, the line would form at 4:30 in the afternoon. So just the last 2 hours, boom, it would be. And you wouldn't have to do a thing to the ride, just turn on the work lights. Have you ever done that?
Oh, yeah. When the people mover breaks down, they turn on the lights, so that's the best time to go. If the people mover isn't working, then you head in line to Space Mountain, and the lights will be on enough that you can kind of see the track. It's really cool.
You'll never raise your hands ever again.
Oh,
No.
I don't.
You'll never get on that ride ever again because you don't trust that it's.
I went on it last night and sat in the very front. And I was like,
Oh yeah, you do. I still do that. So when's the last time you went to the theme park and went on one attraction?
One?
Like only one.
Only one. I go to the park sometime and don't ride anything.
I did that at Disneyland one day, filled a sketchbook, and there was an old man in a wheelchair sitting at the hub facing Tomorrowland with a balloon tied to his chair. And I drew a picture of him. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "You drawing me?" I said, "Yes, sir." "Let me see it when you're done." Best compliment I've ever gotten on any piece of art I've ever done. He said, "Well, doesn't exactly look like me, but it sure feels like me." Are you kidding me? The best. And when I tell that to my artist friends, they're like, "Oh my God, doesn't look like me, but it feels like me."
Wow.
He said, "It doesn't exactly look like me." So he thought it. And I told him, I said, "If you would just see this somewhere, would you know it's you?" "Well, yeah, because the balloon." But it was a fun day, and I didn't go planning not to do any rides. I just said I was going to go and sketch all day, thinking I'd sketch and do some rides. And I didn't even do Peter Pan. I didn't go to a meeting at Disneyland without going out on Peter Pan. In fact, Marty asked me one day, he said, "Where were you yesterday?" "I had a meeting at Disneyland." He said, "With your friends and creative entertainment?" Because he knew I was like, and he was on my side. He said, "You know, McNair, the problem with the creative entertainment group is they are neither creative or entertaining." The term I would use is the finest amateur college dancers in the world.
So, from concept to finish, how long did it take to complete Tower of Terror?
Well, it was arrested development because we came up with the idea and everybody loved it. Michael said, "I'll take 4 of them." Well, because the idea was based on this high-end hotel we were going to do, and they didn't build that, so they just put the thing on hold. Then somebody was looking at the rough blueprints for this, just the kind of the schematic. And I said, this thing is huge. If we built this, it would look like a freestanding hotel. It wouldn't look like it's a missing piece. You know, like lopping off just that end of Newberry's.
Right.
So that was probably a couple of years where it just sat. Otherwise, it would probably have been, 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
Attraction of that size.
Well,
In that we knew it was going to be there, it was designed to go in that spot, to be the icon for Sunset Boulevard, etc.
well, worth the wait.
Oh yeah.
Worth the wait. It is a
No.
wonderful attraction.
And when I was in
My
Paris
favorite.
in 2005, I have a picture of me standing in front of the Tower of Terror. It's a hole in the ground. The one I really want to do is Japan because it's a whole different mythology. They don't do the Tower of Terror at all because
Right.
that's not
a
big in
completely
Japan.
different-
Yeah. And the main characters were based on Joe Rohde's image. In fact, one of the last times I saw him, he was headed over, he was in the LAX airport, and he was headed over to Japan for 4 days of updated photos of Harrison Hightower.
I ran into Joe Rohde a couple years ago in Nomad Lounge.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool experience.
You know, and the funny thing about Joe is he's not an actor, but he's very theatrical. So he rolls with it.
Yeah. Oh, he's very good. I'm not one of those people who like to intrude on.
No, he doesn't mind. If he doesn't want you to bother you, he won't go out in the park.
Yeah.
Or he'll take people, operations people with him to kind of be
Right.
and talk like they've got a meeting. Now, guys, if you go to YouTube and look for the making of Disney MGM Studios, there's a good section of me standing here with Sid Coing in the background talking about the idea behind streetmosphere.
Well, it was an honor being able to ride Tower of Terror with you.
Thank you.
That is something I will not.
That was fun. That was fun. Well, that's the deluxe tour. I've never gotten that kind of treatment ever.
That was really neat. That was really cool.
Well, that will do it for today's episode, everyone. We hope that you have enjoyed this very special episode. It was really a fantastic experience being able to walk through Hollywood Studios and get to ride Tower of Terror with a gentleman who designed it. It was just, it was incredible. So until next week, follow us on social media. You can find all of our posts. We are the Imagineers Disney Podcast. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, you can find us on Apple iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And while you're there, we would really appreciate it if you left us a review. So if you have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a 5-star rating and tell us what you like about the podcast. As always, we appreciate your listenership. We wouldn't be able to do this without the great listeners like you. So thank you once again for listening. And until next week, remember, if you can dream it, you can do it.